an app that became so successful, it had to be erased. Millions of users, millions of videos, exploding across the internet in days. It didn't feel like a product. It felt inevitable. And then, one morning, it was gone. Not loading, not glitching, gone. No countdown, no transition. Just 5 words. We're saying goodbye to Sora. Not paused, not sold. Deleted. Entire ecosystems erased overnight. And by the time people realized what happened, it was already too late. So sit with this. What kind of system kills its own success? Before we get to the billions, you need to see one number. A number that should have predicted this failure before a single dollar was spent. 1 million downloads in 4 days. Number 1 everywhere. It looked unstoppable. Day 7. Retention, 2%. Think about that. 98% of users gone in a week. By day 30, almost nobody was left. Not because it got worse, because the feeling changed. There's a name for this. AI tourism. You show up, you create something insane, you feel powerful for a moment, and then you leave. Because the 10th video feels exciting, the 100th feels empty. And that's the part most people miss. Nothing broke. And when the magic expires, systems don't fail slowly. They collapse all at once. OpenAI didn't just miscalculate the economics. They miscalculated us. But while most people were leaving, some people weren't. Some went deeper. Built on it. Depended on it. A Cambrian explosion of creativity. A world where anyone could create anything. No skill, no budget, no limits. It didn't feel like a tool. It felt like power. People weren't just watching content anymore. They were stepping inside it, becoming the hero, rewriting movies, generating entire worlds in seconds. For a moment, it felt like creativity itself had been unlocked. And that's exactly what made it dangerous. Because every time someone clicked generate, something invisible happened. No warning, no price tag. That one video, it wasn't free. It cost $130. Now pause. Not per user, not per day, per video. Now imagine millions of people doing that. Every single day. That's not usage. That's a financial detonation. What looked like growth wasn't growth. It was damage. Every viral clip, every trending post, every "this is insane" moment was quietly draining the system. The more people loved it, the faster it was dying. OpenAI spent $15 million every single day running Sora, and in its entire existence, Sora generated $2 million in total revenue. Not per day, not per week, $2 million total, ever. That bar chart shouldn't exist.
And just when you think this is about numbers, it gets worse. Because the real damage wasn't on a balance sheet, it was personal. Imagine a creator, small setup, bedroom studio, someone who finally found a way to turn ideas into reality. They build something from nothing. Thousands of subscribers, millions of views, real momentum, real progress. Maybe for the first time in their life, something is working. They wake up one morning, ready to upload. Everything planned, everything ready. They open the app, and instead of their project, 5 words. We're saying goodbye to Sora. Their audience still exists. Their videos still exist. But the tool that made it all possible? Gone. No warning. No transition. No recovery. Just silence.
And while all of this was unfolding, the world was being told a completely different story. A billion-dollar deal between Disney and OpenAI. The future of entertainment. The most iconic characters ever created. Inside an app available to anyone. It sounded inevitable. Investors believed it. Media amplified it. the narrative locked in. But here's what almost nobody noticed. That deal was never signed. A handshake. That's it. And yet it shaped reality, because once people believe something is inevitable, they stop questioning if it's true. Now look at OpenAI's announcement carefully. Not plans to invest. Not intends to. The word they chose was will. The same word, will, appeared in the Stargate announcement. The NVIDIA deal, the SoftBank partnership. Definitive language, unsigned reality. Then came the moment that changes everything.
Agreed. I've adjusted
March
projections.
23rd,
Looks good.
a normal working
Perfect. Any
call.
questions?
Disney and
Great work, Tom.
OpenAI
Bye.
building the future. 8:10, 8:15, 8:20, 8:25. The clock advances, and somewhere in that 30-minute window, a phone
Yes,
rings.
speaking.
What was said on that call didn't just end a
What?
meeting.
That's impossible.
It ended a billion-dollar relationship.
This changes everything.
Instantly. No wind down. Just over. Someone later described it in 2 words. A rug pull. Not a pivot. Not a strategy shift. A rug pull. And once you hear that, you can't unhear it. Disney's public response: we respect OpenAI's decision to shift priorities elsewhere. Every word, chosen with surgical precision. Elsewhere, that single word, is carrying the weight of an entire collapsed relationship. The billion-dollar investment? Over. So now zoom out, because this isn't just about one app. It's about the system behind it. A financial structure so unusual. OpenAI will lose $14 billion this year alone. Cumulative losses through 2028, $44 billion. Profitable, not until 2029. At the earliest, preparing to go public at a valuation of $1 trillion. Same company, same losses, billions flowing in from investors, then flowing right back out to the same companies providing infrastructure. It looks like growth, but inside, it's a loop. Think of it this way. Your friend borrows $100. He buys lunch from your restaurant. You call it revenue. Senator Elizabeth Warren wrote, formally in a Senate letter, that OpenAI has committed to over $1 trillion in spending, has not turned a profit, and may need government assistance. And that's when everything finally clicks. This wasn't just a product problem. It was timing. They were preparing for an IPO, and once you go public, everything is exposed. Every cost, every failure, permanent. A product burning $15 million per day doesn't look like bold innovation on a balance sheet. It looks like a liability. Massive, undeniable. Sora didn't fit the story they needed to tell, so it had to disappear. Not because it was bad, because it was impossible to defend. Now compare that to a company like Google. Google doesn't need AI to make money. It already does, which means it can run AI at a loss forever. Because for them, every click adds value. For OpenAI, every click adds cost. And once you see that difference, the outcome stops being surprising. Then something else surfaces. Not from critics, not from competitors, from people inside. Words used to describe leadership. Repeated, consistent, manipulation, dishonesty. Systematic distrust. And suddenly, the timeline shifts, the announcements, the deals, the timing. It stops looking random. And that leads to the part that changes everything. Sora wasn't killed because it failed. It was killed because it worked too well. Because every user made it weaker. Every viral moment made it bleed faster. Every success pushed it closer to collapse. Think about how rare that is. A product where growth is the problem, where the better it performs, the faster it dies. The survivors share one thing: Adobe, Anthropic, Google. They never made AI the product. They made their products better with AI. And now we're entering the next phase, the IPO, the moment where everything becomes visible. The numbers, the losses. And for the first time, We'll see what was real, and what was just momentum disguised as inevitability. Because this story isn't over. It's just changing form.
IPO filing.
The
Document
IPO
date
filing drops
approaching.
this year.
Numbers
When it does,
materializing. The
I will
hidden
be
ones
here the
becoming
same
visible.
day,
Warm resolve.
with every number
Promise
they tried
made.
to hide.
Genuine. Held.
So the real question isn't why Sora died. It's this. What happens when the next one doesn't disappear? And instead, you do.